Duke, you suck!
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. I'm here with Matt Phillips. Matt, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, as well as you can in the middle of a pandemic, but life's pretty good for me.
Yeah, you're a not only a small business owner but a restaurant owner. How have things been for you? How have you managed to kind of get through the pandemic?
We've blessedly done very well. Our food works really well with takeout. We were able to pivot really, really fast. I hate that word, but we were able to change things and think on our feet real fast and, you know, get a better to grow program going, get some bake at home stuff, get some merch, like that kind of stuff going real fast. We made some, what at the time weren't business decisions, were more just personal. Like one of the big things about Northern is that we really like to be involved in the community and we really like to help out where we can, and the charitable aspect has become really important to us. So we did some stuff right off the bat from a charity standpoint and a giving standpoint that turned into some really amazing business decisions later in the year. And, we've done really well. We've actually ended up hiring through the pandemic. We didn't really lose a bunch of staff. We didn't have to lay anybody off. We had a couple people choose not to come back due to that first little wave. They went home with anxiety, or they had a partner at home that has a breathing problem or something like that. And they've just chosen not to come back into the public life, which is what it is. Like, you know, I can't fault them in any way for not wanting to interact with the general public right now.
Yeah, no, I kind of get that. Like, I have asthma, and I always kind of make the joke, like, of all the things I could suck at in life, breathing. And so the first 2 weeks, to be honest with you, I was almost in full panic mode, right? Because they're like anybody with a breathing thing, and I'm just like, oh geez, I'm gonna die for sure. And it took me a couple weeks. I talked myself off the ledge, and slowly, like, I still take all the precautions. Don't get me wrong, but I understand the anxiety for sure. Yeah.
One of our best cooks, his partner has COPD and just didn't want to have the risk, and I respect that. That's your partner. You got to take care of them, and hopefully when it's all over and done with, he comes back. But it is what it is, and we moved on, found some great opportunities with all the other restaurants closing in the city. We managed to become a home for some people that had lost their jobs, and managed to help some of our other, former executive chefs whose restaurant closed or whatever come on the team. And it was pretty fun. At one point, we had 7 former executive chefs all online together, all working one crazy busy weekend. And it was just sort of fun that, like, the amount of talent that was in that room at that moment was like, I bet you there's never been a restaurant in Edmonton that's had that much talent working for it for a couple of days, especially a fried chicken joint. Like,
that's actually incredible. Like you say, to have seven people that skilled on one line at one time. Did you find things almost got competitive when you're all kind of working together like that?
Yeah. It was who got crash, and like who could pick up, especially out of the guys that hadn't worked for us before, who could pick it up the fastest. And like, It happened to be that was 2 weeks before our busiest weekend ever, and a couple of those guys stayed around through that, and we had a lot of fun with them, just sort of competing about how much chicken everybody was cooking every day, and who didn't have sandbags, who didn't have that. So
we should make sure we shout out Northern Chicken in Edmonton. People, go to this business. These guys are great in the community. They're full support, full rights. And truth is, I work for a company that's actually based out of Edmonton. Most of our staff is actually from Edmonton. And so I was talking to one of our mechanics and I said, hey, brother, you ever heard of Northern Chicken? And he goes, oh man, their mustard chicken's the best shit you're ever going to eat. Like, he was
nice.
Full. Yeah, absolutely. I've never, that was a really enthusiastic endorsement, to say the least. It was nice to hear. Now, for people that aren't aware, I became first aware of Matt on Twitter, taking a lot of shit for being a restaurant that was not only willing to help those in need in the community, but those that may live a different lifestyle. lifestyle. Sorry. Now that we're talking LGBTQ, and I just learned 2+ the other day because I'm an old man and I'm still catching up with the curve.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you for filling that role. I'm certainly not proud of this, but as a young guy, I never was necessarily discriminated against anybody, but I definitely told as many homophobic jokes as I could get out of my mouth in a day. Certainly not something I'm proud of, and definitely something, if I was going to be proud of anything, that I've corrected over the last, decade of my life, I hope. And so I want to thank you guys for kind of being at the forefront of that, because a guy like me doesn't know where to start, right? Like, I don't know how to affect change. I'm a hick, I can barely turn on this strange computing device we're talking on right now.
Yeah. And I think there's tons of people out there, and I think that the world gets a bad rap that there's lots of homophobic people out there, and I think there's more just people that don't know, and people that it doesn't affect their lives, so why does it? And I think that's one thing that definitely there needs to be some compassion given towards, is that there's just a lot of learning. As you said, I'm a little bit on the forefront of this, but I'm still learning absolutely every day from my staff and from the groups that we work with, that things I said don't come across right, or, I used the wrong term for something, or, different binaries, or that kind of stuff that just, all works out, and you're just learning constantly. And I think the biggest thing is just trying to put the effort in.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, like I told homophobic jokes as a teenager and as in my early 20s too. Like, I didn't officially publicly come out of the closet until I was in my mid 30s. Most of my close friends and most of my family knew, but it wasn't like this public thing that I was all about until, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
I definitely didn't hide it. It just wasn't something like I wasn't walking around like I walk around right now with a bi pride little wristband on my hand, and that definitely wasn't something that I was doing 6 years ago. So everybody has those things in their past, and I think we just need to grow from them and acknowledge them, and try to not do it again anymore.
Well, and I think that's the thing, it goes, and I fortunately I'm getting to a point too where, I'm willing to hold somebody accountable, not just not say the joke anymore. Where I'm going to say, like, brother, what are you doing? You're going to, you can't say that shit anymore. Right. Like, it's fortunately society's moving that way. And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm born and raised Calgary, Alberta. I vote conservative, generally speaking, not because I'm not liberal, but because I'm fiscally conservative.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of shit for that, right? But at the same time, I'll always say, like, I will fight for anybody's right to be who they are, because I just can't accept for any reason that somebody's going to get mistreated or have different rights than I do because they choose to live a different lifestyle, no matter what it is. It's none of my friggin' business,
Yeah.
So
I think that's the responsible attitude.
Now, do you find, especially being in Alberta, and I mean, I'm okay with calling out, here's the thing. I'm kind of, a Judeo-Christian ethic in my background, but I'm also the first person to say we have a right as people that, contemporary thinking people that may read a Bible, to openly reject that stuff in the Bible that, let's be honest, I'm just going to call it horseshit, because there's some horseshit in there. How do you deal with the people that kind of come at you? Because again, like I said, I kind of became aware of people, kind of coming at you because, you might cook good food, but you live a different lifestyle. Like, how do you sort of deal with that sort of BS?
No, just call them out. I've never been one to shy away from a fight in my life, and that's, sort of what I brought to the business and what I brought to that side of the advocacy lifestyle as well, is that, like, I'm not going to shy away from it and just let trolls be trolls. Like, I don't think that's the right way to handle, and I think that shit needs to be called out as much as possible. And I grew up as a Presbyterian, so I grew up on the more liberal side of the Christian world. But our church in Olds was one of the first churches with an openly lesbian pastor. Well, pastor, minister. Let's just say minister for lack of not knowing the right term right now. But so I was luckily exposed to a little bit of a different side of Christianity in my upbringing, and it's something I've walked away from. The older I got, I guess, I found some more issues with organized religion, not specifically Christianity, but just organized religion in general. And I think there's a couple of things that we need to remember. One, that the Bible was written over a course of a couple hundred years, And I think that everything in there needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because it was written with a grain of salt. It was stories that were passed down through generations of people, and people's ethics influenced it, and that kind of stuff. And then two, I think it's a living document. I think that it's a document that you take the principles out of it, and you take the basic, lifestyle, and you move with that as the times change.
Yeah. Well,
I think there's a lot in there that is very valid and very good, and a very good way to live your life. But I think we also need to remember that there's been, give or take 2,000 years worth of advancement in civilization and advancement in life. And we need to just remember that and, apply a modern lens to historical documentation.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. Like I always debate with people because, people are always like, is everything in there true? Well, how you debate true and how you debate perception are different things, right? And so I get into these things all the time, and I say, no matter how you want to take everything in the Bible, the bottom line is, if we want to just go to Jesus, he gave you two things to do, right? And the simplest one is just love your neighbor. And so you get all these guys with their quote unquote Judeo-Christian background, like coming at you like you're a piece of shit because you live a different lifestyle. It's like, well, wait a second. What about love thy neighbor? Or is that like, do you apply conditions to that? You know what I mean? And so that's where I get, like you say, my problem isn't necessarily with the Bible. My problem is more so with organized religion. You know what I mean? And the fundamentalist Christians that want to beat you over the head with this, like you say, an archaic form of thinking. Like, Jews don't eat pork, and I get that. But do they not eat pork because the God didn't want them to, or do they not eat pork because they killed the first one, didn't store it right, didn't do something right, ate it, somebody got trichinella and died? So in their head, well, God probably doesn't want us to eat pork. And I think more people need to understand that science and religion aren't exclusive. Like like it's, the ridiculousness to just hold on to those values to me is really tough to tolerate.
Yeah.
Especially when it's being applied to good people that, when I watch what you guys are doing in your community. Have you ever heard of Spolumbos in Calgary?
Yeah. We actually, we do an event I shouldn't say we do an event every year because it didn't happen this year, but we usually do an event down in Calgary called Brewery and the Beast.
Okay.
Which Phillips Brewing puts on, and they bring like 50 restaurants down to do this crazy food festival in a park. And Spolumbos has given us their kitchen twice to do our prep. And get everything ready. And so, those guys have been wonderful to us.
Well, and they're, to me, the business model, like, because I've watched them grow. They were literally like this countertop in a strip mall to grow to what they are today. And I just tell people, like, all those guys did was go to everything, get involved in the community, be out there, support the events, support the city. Yeah, they probably cost them a fortune in sausages, but look where they are today, right?
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what we did. When we started Northern, we were really involved in that kind of stuff, and we really just did everything we could to support and to help the community. And then, more specifically through COVID, like my best friend's a nurse. Andrew's mom is a nurse. We have a couple other of our employees whose family members are nurses, and we saw how they were suffering real bad at the beginning of the pandemic with quarantines, and we're just losing mass amounts of staff on their units or whatever due to, a sore throat goes running through, and it wasn't COVID. God, that's great. But there are two people on a unit of 14 or whatever. And we just decided that the thing we could help with was food.
Right.
So we started dropping food off at all sorts of units. It grew and grew and grew. Thaddeus was involved in one of them. He got us the name of a labor and delivery unit. Another couple of my friends, their wives were nurses, and it just sort of grew to the point where we were doing, I think the max we did 9 deliveries in a week to different units and fed them. And it was just, us trying to be kind and do something that was going to support these people that were just literally getting shit kicked at that point, and still are. But like, I think we've gotten a little bit better with the amount of sick time and that kind of stuff that was coming from people being forced into quarantine and that. But then AHS clamped down and was like, hey, you're not allowed to do this anymore. So is what it is. We got to follow those restrictions.
Right.
They put in a no outside food rule, and a no communal food rule. So for a couple of weeks, we were allowed to just adapt and prepackage everything so that everybody just got their own little box and they could eat. And then eventually AHS was just like, you're not allowed to do this at all anymore. So is what it is.
Yeah, I see why I appreciate their side of it, but it's still kind of disappointing. You guys are doing something so
it
good,
still
right?
sucks, but it is what it is. So we were a little bummed out about that, and we were telling that story to some guys we know at ATB, and they came back a couple of days later and were like, "Hey, ATB has this really cool promotion for you and 2 other restaurants. Why don't we give you guys $5,000? You guys pitch in whatever you want to pitch in, and let's do 40 to 50% off meals for healthcare workers." So we jumped in, we tossed in $5,000 of our own money, and we started it on a Friday at 5, and we rocked until we ran out of cash. So we ended up feeding 968 individual orders. So gotta assume even 2 people per order, as most households or whatever. So 1,800, 1,900 people got fed out of that. That
wow, man,
was
good for you.
absolutely
Like, that's
amazing.
so good.
And super fulfilling and great to be a part of, and to just see all those people, especially at the beginning. Like, that would be, when would that have been? The end of April last year. So that was really when, like, the fatigue was really starting to kick in, and it was great just to be able to do something to help the community.
Right.
And then from a business side of things, like, so many of those nurses and doctors and lab techs and janitors and everything else that's involved in the healthcare system that is such a big important part of how it works. So many of them have now become raving fans of ours and support us and come down on their own weekends now and buy stuff. And we managed to do another one in the fall, and that was great. And it was awesome to really support the same people over and over again. But, it just really worked out in our favor that we produced, call it 1,000 raving fans out of doing that as well. So,
well,
I think
mean,
something really to be said for that.
Well, and if no press is bad press, I get that, but there's no better advertising than being that charitable in your community, right? Like, it's, I mean, we all, excuse me, before the pandemic, I was, I've always kind of been very, thank our soldiers, thank people that serve us, for the blanket of freedom we sleep under, for what it is. And I've always been so appreciative. And the pandemic's definitely made me aware of, we need to be that appreciative of our healthcare staff. You know what I mean? You kind of don't realize what they're dealing with until you kind of see something like this come down. It's like, there's no holidays being taken. There's no they're flat out, feet to the floor all day long. And then they got to come home to people saying, well, what you're doing is a lie. Right. And it's just like, man, go to hell. Even if you feel that way, you don't got to tell them that. Like,
no. And then you got to take, no matter where your political leanings lie, that definitely don't think the government has handled the healthcare system this year, particularly well either. It's not a year to pick a fight with doctors and nurses and tell them that they're not what they're worth, and show up on their doorsteps and yell at them and stuff like that. So I think there just needs to be a lot more respect for the work that they do. And,
when you're making cuts, healthcare and education, those aren't places you cut. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's the constant. And again, I don't care what government, who you vote for. All I ever care, no matter who wins, is that the government succeeds. Because if their plan doesn't succeed, I didn't vote NDP. I don't mind telling you that. And I don't necessarily, doesn't matter whether their plan succeeded or not. I sure wanted it to, because if it does, we're all doing better, right?
Yeah.
I voted UCP. I have no telling you, the problem hasn't, the plan hasn't succeeded, and I feel like I stepped in shit. That's just the truth. Like, it's, I'm sure everybody's doing their quote unquote best to some degree, but yeah, when you're making decisions like, hey, our hospitals are going to be overrun, people are going to be overworked, morale's going to be in the toilet. Yeah, maybe we should start messing with these people and how much money they make. Like,
yeah,
come on, man.
Just not smart. Like, just, I don't know.
Well, I had a big discussion with a friend of mine about pandering to the base, and my one thing, kind of the cause I took up after being at a pride parade was, our government needs to make sure they are leaders and representatives to all people, no matter what. Until you're a leader to all people, you'll never be a true leader. And his comment was, in Jason Kenney's case, he's worried about the base. He's worried about losing voters to that. And my comment was immediately, listen, I'm a middle person. Most people are like me. And most of us will respect him more if he doesn't have to go march in a parade, but just make sure you say something and openly support them. Right.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, what about the base? I said, I'm telling you right now, he'll gain more voters by doing that then voters he'll lose. And the voters he loses, he doesn't want anyways, right?
Yep.
There's people that you have to say like, hey, we support you. Hey, please don't support me. You're a shitty human being, right? Like you have to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, getting back to sort of how you found out about me, that's what was going on there, is like, I wasn't coming out and telling people that, like, if you weren't gay or queer or anywhere under the rainbow, that you shouldn't eat a Northern Chicken. I was just saying, don't shit on us. Like, we had, in a period of a 2-week period, we had 4 different homophobic comments get made to people at the front. We had a person call 3 times in the same day and say very, very obscene things to our staff. And I'm just the kind of guy that I'm not going to stand up for that. So I pumped out that message that was like, hey, most of our staff is LGBTQ2SA identifying. We're very supportive of that. I'm a very proud queer business owner. We support queer charities, and we want to make an inclusive place for them to work and feel comfortable. And, we're not saying don't come. We're just saying, if you want to make a big deal out of who our staff is and that kind of stuff, then fuck you. We don't want your business anyways. And it ended up blowing up into what it did. And that chick decided to take a little bit of a shot at what I was wearing in my profile picture. And it is what it is. But like, I don't see the point in any of it. Like,
well, the thing is, once we start attacking people personally, and I've been in these conversations myself where, if you don't agree with somebody, it's not that you agree to disagree. It's that you're a total fucking piece of shit. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, well, why can't you just shut your mouth, agree to disagree, and go on with your day? Why do you have to call me out on my lifestyle or the shirt I'm wearing that day or the car I drive, or, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm at an age, I'm 48 years old, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, I'm so tired of the shit. And I look at young people, and a lot of it is coming from younger people. Like, yeah, some of it's idiots my age too, driving around their jacked up pickup trucks, wishing they had a pair of balls. But a lot of it's just morons. And I can't even get my head around it. I literally can't, because Matt, in all honestly, I have to work to be a nice guy. I can see that I'm a total asshole. So I hear stuff like this and I can't understand it. Like, I literally can't get my head around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it doesn't make any sense to me that there's people out there that care that much. And I don't know, maybe that's being sensitive. Maybe that's being a snowflake, as I like to say all the time, but like, just stay out of people's business.
Well, yeah, man. And like, I almost feel like I need to apologize on behalf of straight men, because it's at that point now, right? It's like, why? And I'm willing to bet, there's the odd woman, but I'm probably willing to bet a lot of it comes from men. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, what are you so threatened by that, 2 men or 2 women want to get married? That doesn't make you less married. It doesn't make you gay too. Like, who gives a shit, right? Like, literally, out of all the shit in your day, you got to worry about. That's what you're taking your time to fuck with someone over. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get it. And then, the retort is always, well, then get rid of pride parades and get rid of the rainbows. And we don't want to have it shoved in our faces and that kind of stuff. But like, turn on the TV. Heterosexual relationships are being shoved in everybody's faces all the time. Walk down the street. Everybody's holding hands. Like, we're not calling for that stuff to get taken away. It's just, we want to be proud too. We want to be able to hold our partners' hands in the street and not get beaten up or not get yelled at.
Well,
so I don't know.
I think you nailed it there. Like, until you can walk down the street holding a partner's hand, or until you can serve somebody a meal and have an exchange of money for food and not get called a homophobic slur, until we're at that point, I kind of think parades are necessary.
Yeah.
Right. And that's coming from, again, a fairly conservative, older white males. Like, man, until people, like, people say like, oh, do we really need to hear the message for men to stop beating women? Obviously we do, because it's still happening. Like,
we're not getting it yet.
Yeah. Like, there's some guys are there. We're just, it's the message just isn't clicking. So how else do you repeat it? But to keep cramming it to some degree, you have to just shove it down their throats. Right.
Yeah.
I'm tired of having to debate people like, well, why do you hate him? Because he's a queer. Okay. But, he's a genius, but he's queer. Okay. But he does more in his community than you do, but he's a queer. Get the fuck out of here.
What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so what? You'd probably suck your dog's dick when I'm not looking. I don't care.
Yeah.
Anyways, this turned into a dirty conversation. Sorry, man.
Yeah. I just, the whole thing just sort of boggles my mind that it blew up the way it did, and that people wanted to make such a big deal out of it. That one chick from Beaumont still is trying to come after me on a daily basis, and I've just sort of, we're gonna agree to disagree. I don't think I'm ever gonna change her mind, and she's never gonna change mine. So it is what it is. But
well, how arrogant though is it for her to come and say, "I'm going to change this guy's mind"? Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to have a conversation with somebody and we can air ideas and hopefully we provoke each other to think. But at no point should you sit down with somebody thinking, I know so much, I need to change your mind. Do you know what I mean? And there's bigots out there who need to change their mind. But before we can do that, we kind of need to sit down with them and just exchange the idea. If you come and say, I need to change your mind, they're going to tell you to fuck off.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I've told a lot of people that in my life. So it's but yeah, it just, kind of going back. So how big of a change did you notice in the shit you took when you kind of openly came out? Like, was it almost immediate?
Part, like, I'm one of those very lucky bisexuals or LGBTQ2S people that hasn't had a tremendous amount. Like, I've never been gay bashed. I've had my walking out of Evolution, which is the gay club in Edmonton, walking down the street out of there and, getting called a fag as somebody drives by, or, that kind of stuff, or standing out having a smoke and people come up and want to run their mouths about us. So that,
right.
That's there, but I've been lucky and I've never been beaten up for it or any of that kind of stuff. But, it definitely, like, the minute the Northern Chicken attached itself to the Edmonton Pride Festival, which was the year that sort of all of this happened, we started to get, within probably 48 hours, we started to get hate for it.
Really? Hey?
And at that point we were, I was out at that point. We had a lot of LGBTQ2S people working for us at that point, but we weren't really the same out and proud as we are now.
Right.
But we're just like, why are you even taking part in this festival? Why are you providing food for them? This is wrong, and that kind of stuff. And I was just like, they asked us to provide food. We said we'd provide for them. Like, it's a great community to be part of. It was a fun party to throw a tent up and fry some chicken for people and have a good time. And, I think what ended up happening was we ended up getting so much hate from that. And there was so much backlash to it that we just decided to say, fuck it, and jumped all in.
Right.
And if people are going to be like that to us, then, like, why not? Let's quit hiding it. Let's make the people at work feel good about it. Let's put the flags up and let's put the stickers on the door and make it so it's not just a once a year Pride Festival week that here's Northern Chicken queer washing something. It's like, this is who we are. And
absolutely.
And it is what it is.
Yeah. And you know what, man, I can remember there was a place in Calgary when my mom was working for something called the Sharp Foundation, and it was called Money Pennies was the place. And it was, for me, one of the first openly gay, LGBTQ. What I'm going to get back to this LGBTQ essay. I need to learn this one. Sorry, man. But they always had a little flagpole outside of the pub with a rainbow on. So for me, as early as probably maybe 91 at the latest, I kind of recognized those symbols and started to realize, like, hey, these are business owners in our communities. And they're just like you and I. They just do a different thing than I do on, and I quickly realized that any bigotry that I'd been a part of or thought of was really, really, really misguided. Do you know what I mean? And I would have been 18 or 19. You know what I mean? Like, just old enough to know better, but all of a sudden it was just like, geez, man, I come down to this pub. Nobody bothers me. Nobody tries to fight me. There's no egos in this place. Like, me and my friends, actually, when I was just out of high school, and I don't want to sue any of my friends, so I won't mention any names, of course, but we used to love to take acid. and go to this gay bar
Yeah.
called the Warehouse because it was so
Oh,
fun
yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
I
And
love the
nobody, again,
Warehouse.
never a fight, never anybody bothering you. Nobody, everybody's like, well, doesn't anybody hit on you? Listen, they have a better gaydar than we do. They know. Don't worry. And we used to love going to the Warehouse, man.
Yeah. Well, that was a fun club.
Yeah, like, so people, so it's one of those and again, I still told all those stupid homophobic jokes that I'm not proud of, but again, Marcel, the waiter, he might have been the gayest man I've ever seen in my life, but he was always so nice to us. And so it really set me up for later in life, kind of when I started to see this type of discrimination, like, hey man, I don't understand where this is coming from. Like, never, it really, and now I'm at a point, at least, not only do I not understand where it's coming from, it actually bothers me. Like I'm starting to become an advocate. I think, I don't want to say that. And I don't want to make too much out of anything, but I'm definitely crossing the street to, hey, we need to speak out more about this because it's starting to get to a point where it bothers me, it actually does bother me.
And that's the most that most of us can ask for, is that people get to that point where you're calling that shit out, and it gets stopped at the point of friends, and it gets stopped at the point of family, because you're going to listen, most people are going to listen to those people way more than they're going to listen to a guy like me, or they're going to listen to a politician or somebody like that. Like, getting dressed down by your best friend because you told a homophobic joke hurts way more than, cancel culture coming down on somebody or something like that. So, I think that's huge. And, you publicly saying that, like, don't dress it down. Don't say that you're, don't want to make a big deal out of it. I think that's commendable. And I think the more that people see that, the more that people acknowledge that, the better life's going to be for everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Cause I didn't say that to seek praise by any means, but
yeah.
I think as somebody, I had a wrestling coach that kind of told us once, he gave us so much of his time, and he told us that we have to give back kind of every minute he gave us. And now I guess there's part of me that feels obligated to, for all the shit I talked and all the stupid jokes I told, I kind of have to go the other way and be like, hey man, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that shit. And if you were influenced by any dumb thing I said, I apologize. And you shouldn't say that either. You know what I do feel that responsibility now.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's very commendable. And I think that the more people that are like that, the better it's going to get for everybody. Because then those bigots and those people that actually believe it are going to get pushed further and further to the fringes.
Right.
And then we'll really be able to see that they're on the fringe. And I think that will do wonders for the community too, to realize that there's a lot more people that are silently supporting.
Right. Well, and that's
because the biggest voices are the loudest. And I think, I said this to my partner when we were going through all that shit online a couple of weeks ago, was that, like, maybe there was 110 negative comments. There was over 3,000 positive ones.
Right. Yeah.
But I was so consumed in that couple day period with what those 110 negative things that had been said about me, that I didn't stop for probably a day and a half or 2 days until afterwards to really realize that there was like 3,000 people that had just instantly come to my support too.
Right.
And,
but that's a human nature thing, right? Like, know, people talk all this shit about the silver lining, but most of us are looking at that. Most of us are looking at the dark cloud, right? Most of us are, like you say, there's 3,000 positive things, but those 110 sons of bitches, like,
I was just like, fuck, I'm going to kill those guys. And then I was like, oh wait, there's so many people that stepped up to support me and support us. So, it just takes time to learn that and to realize that.
Well, and like anything, we got to pick which hills we die on. You know what I mean? I got a buddy who, much wiser than I, and he's constantly, when he sees me get stirred up about something, as I'm prone to do, the answer is, hey, Durango, is this the hill you really want to die on? No, right. So we wind ourselves up, especially focusing on that negative stuff. But at the same time, sometimes the negative stuff needs to come to the forefront so we can, we can kind of point the positive at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think that's where, and again, well, that's not to blow sunshine up your ass, but I think that's where people like you, especially as a small business owner and living under living under that rainbow, for guys like you to be able to be in your community and just be able to do your thing and support, whomever, You know, it shouldn't matter who you support as a business owner. Nobody can just say like, hey man, thanks for supporting the community, right? Like they can't say that. Thanks for being somebody that actually brings food to our hospitals. They don't want to, especially that piece of shit vocal minority. They're not going to talk about the 900 people that you fed. They're going to talk about like, well, but I don't like your lifestyle. Yeah, but we fed 900 people. We fed 9 wards at the hospital, but I don't like your lifestyle. Oh man, really?
We gave away, so through the pandemic, we've given away close to $23,000. And
so in an economic downturn, when everyone else is eating shit, when everyone else is, folding up tent and trying to make it through, you guys have reached down into your pocketbooks and given away $23,000.
Yeah. And as a result of that, I've not taken a paycheck 2 months out of the pandemic.
Right.
We're set up as salaried employees, not as dividends. So it's not set up so that the restaurant makes profit and I get paid. I'm a paid employee because I work in the restaurant. And then there's been 2 months that I've chosen to donate rather large sums to charitable organizations or to something like that. And then just chosen not to pay myself and, figured out how to get my mortgage paid for so at least I could survive. And then been like, well, I'm going to eat at the restaurant for the week. And I guess that I'm privileged that I have a restaurant to eat out of and that kind of stuff. But we're not going out and spending money on that kind of stuff. But, the choice was there that we as Northern Chicken wanted to make sure that our community obligation, I don't want to say obligations because that's not the right word. It's not an obligation, but like our community support was still there no matter what happened financially to the business. And if we could continue to, rather than take our success through the pandemic and pocket it, we decided to turn that money and put it back into the community. And I'm very, very proud of that. I guess I don't know where I'm going with this, but
no, I mean, I think what it is it's the ultimate pay it forward, and I think if more of us were community minded like that, and myself included, to be quite honest with you, I mean, what you're telling me is inspiring. And we will, afterwards, I need you to send me the links to whatever charitable donations, whatever people you're working with, and we'll make sure we pump the tires on all those organizations because, like I said, in these times when everybody's losing money, people stop giving, right? People aren't working, so they stop giving. People's businesses aren't making money, so they stop giving. So businesses like yours sorry, go ahead.
That was our big push. Sorry, I totally interrupted you.
That was our big
push. That was our big push, was specifically with queer charities and some of the other ones that we really chose to work for through this, was they were really disproportionately affected by this.
Right.
Like everybody, well, maybe I shouldn't say everybody, but so many people were still willing to make a United Way donation or a food bank donation or that kind of stuff. But that fringe, and I hate to say fringe, but that like fringe section of society where they're already struggling to get anybody to give them donations in the first place. Those are the first ones that, like, when your 7th or 8th donation request has come in, you're probably going to be like, well, fuck, I'm going to pick United Way, I'm going to pick food bank, and I'm going to pick, mental health or whatever. So that was a big push on our behalf to think about that and to realize that everybody was getting screwed this year. So if we could, we needed to step up.
Yeah. Well, and for people that don't understand, like they say like, well, okay, Matt, you got a restaurant, you can at least eat. Yeah, but the rest, not getting paid and eating at the restaurant's one thing. Paying your heat bill, your electric bill, your rent / mortgage, and or retiring someday, if that's a thing for I don't know if that's a thing for a restaurateur. I don't know if I've ever met a retired restaurateur, but if that's a thing for you,
No, it just, it was sort of looking at it and realizing that at this point, people needed it more than we did. And we could keep the lights on, we could keep people employed. So why not increase the charitable donations to try to take away from, like, not take away, but like to try to take away the pain from all the charities that they were losing.
Right.
A very good friend of mine owns Evolution, which is the gay bar in Edmonton. And they've been closed for a year, and all the charities that he normally donates are not getting anything now because of that. And, they were hugely charitable.
Well,
so where's that
money
going to
hang
come
on,
from?
right?
Yeah. Where's that money going to come from? So, we just figured that since we had some money in the bank and we were making it, or we could figure out ways to do it and still make decent amounts of cash. Like, one of our favorite things to do is we do dinners for silent auctions rather than just pumping like, here's a $1,000 donation.
Yeah.
We'll do a dinner for 10. And then people can bid on that and get whatever. And, you know, some of those dinners have gone for upwards of $3,000, which is sweet.
Yeah. Right.
And then we're just gonna, you know, we're gonna step our game up real good when those people come in, or when we're allowed to have those people come back in, and make sure that they get their $3,000 worth.
Right. That's one of those nights you call those other 7 chefs back to the line, you know, or the other 6 chefs back in.
Yeah. And those ones are fun too, because we get to cook outside of our comfort zone a little bit for those dinners. Like, all of us are former fine dining. Just because we serve fried chicken now doesn't really mean what we used to do. So it's fun to do some of those dinners again too, and you know, blow somebody's mind with some interesting foods. So,
well, yeah, I was reading your bio, and you were at a steakhouse before, like one of the higher end steakhouses in Edmonton, if I'm correct. Yeah,
I was the executive chef of Lux, which is one of the higher end steakhouses in the city for the last 7 years before we opened Northern.
And what made you say, you know, I'm done here, I'm going on my own? What kind of caused that, if you don't mind me asking? I'm always interested in that part of a story.
Well, this is a little libelous, but I'm going to say it anyways, because it is what it is.
Hey, nobody's watching anyway, man. Don't worry.
I have some pretty severe mental health concerns. I guess it's not liable if it's true, and I have witnesses to prove it. So it is what it is. I have some pretty severe mental health conditions. I've been in therapy since I was 14. I've been on meds since I was 16, off and on. Sort of depending on doctors trying to take me off them for a couple of years or a year. Never really my choice to go off, more just like, let's see how you're doing kind of things.
Oh, okay.
And I've been very, very vocal about my mental health since I was in my early 20s online. Did the blog thing, did the Twitter thing, did the website. Andrew and I, my partner at Northern Chicken, we helped co-found a charity that focuses on mental health in the hospital and the restaurant industry, called In the Weeds, where we're giving $10 therapy to servers and cooks and that kind of stuff throughout the Edmonton restaurant industry. So we'll give out about 300 hours this year, assuming that they all get taken.
Good for you guys,
and when
man.
I was working for Lux, I was, you know, out there on my Twitter and on my Facebook talking about being suicidal and talking about, you know, the struggles with anxiety and depression, and, you know, a misdiagnosis when I was younger and sort of how that was affecting me now and that kind of stuff. And the owner of the restaurant decided to run his mouth in the middle of a meeting and make a suicide joke, and was like, am I going to come in here and find you with a slit throat? And then proceeded to just berate me in front of a meeting room full of people about sharing my story and be like, nobody wants to see that. You're a public figure. Like, shut the fuck up about your mental health. And my response was fuck you. I'd always sort of had this idea in the back of my mind about opening a fried chicken joint that was, you know, fun and accessible and employees first, and sort of, you know, I don't want to say the word ghetto because that's not correct, but like, you know, it was just sort of a place that could do good food and good beer and didn't have any pretension behind it. It was just
a dirty bird.
Yeah. We stood up for what we were. So after that meeting, I sort of made the decision that my time at Lux was going to be over, and I needed to just sort of figure out my exit strategy. I had squirreled away probably half of what I needed to open the restaurant.
Okay.
Went out and had a conversation with my parents. It was 2 weeks before Grey Cup, so I went out and watched the Grey Cup with my parents, and was just sort of very blunt with them about what had just happened to me and what was going on. And mom and dad, I'm an only child, and mom and dad sort of approached me and were like, hey, you know, you're going to get your inheritance no matter what. Why don't we look at a situation where you get a little bit of that early?
Wow, that's nice.
And as an only child, it was great for them to set that up. And they were like, you know, there's a chance that we lose this, but we probably won't. So why don't we help you out? So I took another chunk of money from them and approached Andrew, who's my business partner, and was like, hey, I got this concept. What do you think? And we just ran with it. We brought in a third partner who sort of helped us out with the logistics of finding a place and the business, like the city side of things and getting permits and that kind of stuff.
Good Lord, that must be a nightmare for a food business.
Yeah, it was horrible. And then we just started building the concept of like, can we build this employee first for lack of a better way to put it, big boy job restaurant where people start with benefits, where people get paid more than minimum wage, where we share the tips, where everybody's trained as much as possible. That part of the restaurant sort of fell apart a little bit, but everybody's trained on everything.
Right.
So there's no back of house versus front of house. There's no that kind of stuff. And
I see.
That fell apart a little bit once we got real busy.
Because then people have to be where they're specialized.
You need those cooks that are just great cooks to cook. You don't need those great cooks like struggling to figure out how to serve a table and a server struggling to figure out how to cook a piece of chicken. So
there's
it's going a little bit more into the front of house, back of house than what we originally designed, but we still try to do as much cross training as we can.
Right.
And we just wanted to see if it was possible to open a restaurant that treated people well. Because everybody knows, or everybody that's worked in a restaurant, or everybody's seen Hell's Kitchen or any of that, those kind of things. Like, Hell's Kitchen is a gross exaggeration of how shitty a kitchen is. But like, I worked in kitchens where I got plates thrown at me.
Really?
I worked in lots of kitchens where stuff got smashed, where plates got things, where you got burnt with stuff if you did wrong, where a chef walked around with a rubber mallet and slammed your prep table if you weren't prepping fast enough, or
holy shit.
Like that old school mentality of kitchens, it's going away, thank God. But
most of us don't even know that exists, Matt. Like, I've never heard this. I just thought, honestly, I thought Chef Ramsay was just like the bad hockey coach of cooking. You know what I mean? Like,
no, that was life.
Really?
I remember one of my first days on meats at a restaurant. I had literally been promoted to the meat station. And the head of the whole company came down and had lunch there, and he ordered 5 of the sandwiches from us. And like, I was new on meats, somebody was new on sides, somebody was new on salads. Like it didn't go well at all. Like this, it was one of those services that you walk away from and you're like, that was one of the worst experiences of my life. I never want to cook that poorly ever again, but it is what it is. And that's cooking, and you learn from it and you grow and you don't do it again. Right. But he chose to come back in with a Sunterra version of the sandwich and our version of the sandwich. And he was like, which one do you want to fucking eat? This one or this one? And we'd say, and then he'd smash the plate on the wall. And then we move on to the next one. So, and that's not to, but there's tons of kitchens that were like that. There's tons of kitchens that are still like that.
Is that right? Hey, wow.
And the new generation of people my age and younger are definitely making changes and running way nicer, way more inclusive, way less masculine, like cut your fucking finger, put it on the flat top, get back to work bullshit kind of kitchens. But
is there? Yeah, I guess there's some male ego involved here.
Yeah, and it's very much been like, you look at the hospitality industry, and it's like, it's that industry that lots of people fall into because they can't do other things. They come out of jail and they need a job, or like the economy crashes and everybody's like, oh, I can go be a cook again.
Right.
So you get a lot of people that just sort of fall into that world of like masculine bullshit. And, generally restaurants are very profit margin driven. So they treat people like garbage. There's booze around all the time. There's parties around all the time. So you get all sorts of, garbage that comes with the restaurant industry.
Right.
So Andrew and I looked at each other and we were like, can we make a place where people are treated like people? Can we make a place where, like, if you book a day off for a doctor's appointment, you don't lose the next 4 shifts? You get to go to your doctor's appointment, or like you want to take a week off to go camping in the summer. That doesn't affect the whole rest of your schedule for the rest of the summer. Like most restaurants are, like,
wow.
So we opened Northern to try to be the most inclusive, employee focused place. Like, I'm not going to say that I've never yelled at somebody, because I too came out of those kitchens. I was that angry chef.
Right.
I've worked really hard over the last 10 years to not be that angry chef. But if you talk to people that worked for me at the end of my time at Joey's and the beginning of my time at Lux, like, I was that guy too.
Right. I never directed it kind of at anyone, but I've been known to kick in the 5 high drawers on the filing cabinets and have to replace those. And so I definitely get that I'd always try and direct it at something else, but there was no secret that, I was upset. So and again, you get better. Like especially as a business owner, I used to work at one company where I was management. And I would lose my temper and let the guys know I was upset. And then when they worked directly for me, it was like, okay, well, I need these guys to stay here because now they work for me. And my attitude completely changed, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you know, they were real scared of me when they first started. And by the end of the first year, they were walking all over me, those dirty bastards.
Yeah, and that's the downside of it is, you know, we're maybe a little more accommodating than we should be, but you know, our turnover rate is almost non-existent, and the people
Right.
that we do lose, almost all of them were losing to upward advancement.
Right.
It's people finishing their university degrees and being like, "Hey, I now have my engineering degree. I'm going to go be an engineer."
Yeah, and fair enough, right?
We had a guy finish his law degree and it's like, "Okay, well, I'm going to go be a lawyer now. Like, I'm going to article this year." And we were like, "Okay, cool, yeah."
But hopefully he left you with, if you need anything, call me. You know?
Yeah. Or we lost in the last year, we've lost 3 different people to opening their own places.
Okay.
So, but
it's nice to see that kind of leaving, right?
Yeah,
not because
like,
you're a bad boss.
Proud.
Yeah.
Like, I did so well with this guy that somebody else has given him a shot.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of turnover that I'm pretty happy about having, is that these guys are moving up and on into things that are amazing for them.
Well, they're not just employees now. You're mentoring them, right, to take the next step.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. That's kind of what everybody needs to do when you're in a trade, right? You need to kind of mentor the next generation.
Yeah. So it's worked so far. Like,
right on, man.
You know, it costs us more, and we make way less money than lots of restaurants do because of that. But like, the fact that all our employees can go get their pills and not worry about it, and they can go get their teeth cleaned, and they all have the glasses they need and that kind of stuff, like, I think that pays off in happiness and how hard they work and that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, I think we're probably doing just as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what I own my own business. I used to kind of say, like, I'll die penniless, but I'll be smiling and sleeping well. You know, yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for that in this life. On that note, buddy. Okay. So can you give us all the Northern Chicken, give us how people can get a hold of you guys? How could they order? Where are the menus at? And then, like say, I'll get you to send me a message and we'll get all the links and post them when we run this show.
So North Chicken YEG on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. NorthChickenYEG.com is the website. Menus linked on there. There's also an online ordering platform if you want to place an order and come pick it up. We're on DoorDash and Uber Eats. We'd love you a ton if you don't use those things, but we understand that lots of people do, so we're on them. We just save 20% if you actually come to the restaurant, so that's pretty sure. Yeah, that's that. We're on 10704 124th Street in Edmonton, Alberta, and we're right in the corner. We're right beside Duchess, which if you want to go down and get some of the best pastries in Alberta, it's next door. We got some pretty cool people in the basement, or a little meat shop called Muley's that probably makes the best sausages and charcuterie and that kind of stuff in Alberta.
Nice.
Possibly Canada. So we always love to send people down there after they place their order. Go run down to Muley's and take a look at some of the meats and the high-end olive oils and chocolates and that kind of stuff that they've chose to sell. And, you know, it's a good way to kill the 10 minutes while our food's
These guys are coming. Like a solid little food co-op up in there.
Yeah. Nice. If I don't want to say if you're man enough, but if you want a real fun experience, try the WNFA chicken, the We're Not Fucking Around. It's probably the hottest thing you'll ever eat.
Is that right, eh?
Yeah, it's Carolina Reapers, Apocalypse Red Lavas, Trinidad Moraga Scorpions, and then the lowest pepper used in it is the ghost pepper.
Which is, for most people, the highest, as high as they go.
Yeah, everybody's like, ooh, ghost peppers. And we're like, yeah, that's the lowest one in that blend. So
Lord, Lamp, Light, and Jesus. And how many of those do you sell?
I think this weekend we sold over 300.
Are you joking?
Yeah, you get lots of people so we allow people, like, if you get a 6-piece of chicken, we allow you to do 3 flavors.
Oh, okay, I see.
So you get lots of people that do like the normal hot, which is just your standard like cayenne, Nashville style hot chicken. So think about like Frank's.
Okay.
Then they do like mustard, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, maybe we'll try 2 pieces of the WNFA. And you get lots of people that like push themselves that way, that try to just do a couple. So, you know, it's fun. It's an experience. If you want some fun, watch Thaddeus's videos you go on his YouTube. He's got videos of him eating all sorts of stuff from us.
Okay.
We could definitely go way hotter than the WNFA, which I've done for some of his shows, but we always sort of throw the WNFA in there too. So,
well, ladies and gentlemen that are watching this show, you have to eat at a place that has something called the We're Not Fucking Around Chicken. Matt Phillips, Northern Chicken, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was great to hear your story. I appreciate your time, and good luck in all your future endeavors. Kind of bullshit, and we'll keep in touch, man. We'll do this again. You're
awesome.
You're a fantastic.
I appreciate
guy to
it.
talk to.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, man. Have a good night.
You too.